What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So, look, in this video, I want to talk about Skip Bayless, all right? Skip, I think sometimes gets a pass for various reasons. Sometimes people just say they don't take him seriously, and, he's a troll and all these different things. But sometimes I think it's because since he's a LeBron James critic, and there are a lot of people who have issues with LeBron, therefore, because of that, they are willing to give Skip passes that they wouldn't give someone else. Plus there's some other factors. Come on, let's be honest. But the problem I have with Skip Bayless is that he goes beyond the norm when it comes to criticizing players. It's not just from a sports standpoint with Skip Bayless. He gets personal, okay? And by that, I mean he starts questioning your manhood. He starts questioning your toughness. He starts questioning, in some instances, your sexuality. And he has a bad habit of doing that. A very bad habit of doing that. Remember, he called Chris Bosh, Chris Bosh Spice, equating him to one of the Spice Girls, who was a popular female singing group back in the late 90s, very early 2000s, to the point where Chris Bosh had to appear on the show. We all remember, well, not all of us, but a lot of us remember, he used to cover the Dallas Cowboys back in the 90s. He infamously, I guess I should say, not famously, infamously accused Troy Aikman of being gay, with no credible evidence other than that Troy was not married. Okay, now since his career, Troy has gotten married and has kids. But I think Troy thought about suing Skip Bayless. And he has this thing where he does that. He questions, he can get to the point where he questions your manhood, questions your toughness, questions how much of a man you are, right? And you look at this little, I know the guy fucking lives in the weight, lives as far as lifting weights and jogs and shit like that, man. But you look at this little pipsqueak motherfucker, right? And at the end of the day, you have to say to yourself, like, who is this? Like, sometimes he'll say something like, look, Ja just hasn't proven enough to me. Look, I want to like Ja. He seems like a nice guy, but he's not the killer on the court that I would prefer. He hasn't proven to me. Who the fuck are you? Oh, Jalen Rose proved who you were. A guy that averaged, 0.5 points a game? When you were saying you was the high school equivalent of, or middle school or high school equivalent of Pistol Pete, you was averaging 0.5 points a game, a fucking bum. Look, at the end of the day, a lot of these fucking so-called sports analysts, they have a tremendous jealousy towards a lot of these players. And I'm not talking about, see, look, the sports writers, a lot of them of the past, a lot of the sports writers of the past love sports, but many of them did not look upon themselves as athletes. Oh, they may have played basketball in high school. They may have played football in high school. Some of them may be in college. But they didn't look at themselves as athletes. They knew they weren't good enough. These people were realistic. Look, I know that I'm not a great athlete. Look, you know that Howard Cosell, he knew he was not a gym dandy. He knew he was not an athlete. I was a lawyer that should have stayed in that profession. But I switched over, and I am Mr. Monday Night Football. Okay, but look, he knew that he was not an athlete. A lot of these sports analysts today, they're jealous of the athlete's abilities, and more importantly, even though a lot of them make good money, the gulf between what they make and what these athletes make is the largest it's ever been. And they're jealous of that money. Yeah, Stephen A. Smith might make $8-10 million a year before taxes. But a guy like LeBron, when you include endorsements, probably makes $100 million plus a year. Maybe more. Maybe even more than that. So, yes, there is jealousy. Kyrie Irving makes infinitely more money than Stephen A. Smith, another failed athlete who hates on athletes today. You know, it's a general trend. You know, so I also noticed that Skip Bayless, Skip, I think, takes, like Stephen A. Smith, I think he takes personal slights from athletes and doesn't let it go. All right? I think if you slighted them as an athlete, some meeting, some press meeting, whatever, some situation where the athlete sort of blew him off, they take it personal, and they do everything they can to shield that athlete and his legacy. And then sometimes some of it's just calculated. Giannis can't be the nicest person. Can be the nicest person. He is one of the nicest persons in the NBA. One of the most likable stories. They just had a movie that came out called Rise, based upon him and his brothers. But you can already see that's Skip's retirement plan. Giannis is Skip's retirement plan. As LeBron goes into the sunset of his career, Skip needs more athletes to hate on. So it's either going to be Giannis and or Luka. Because he knows that those two guys are going to be the face of the league. He needs that prominent athlete for him to be that antagonist towards, for hits and for views and for attention. That's what he seeks, attention. His takes, his views, they don't make any fucking sense whatsoever at times. They make no sense. A lot of times they're contradictory. You claim that you don't fuck with LeBron because, hey, he doesn't know how to close games and he's a bad free throw shooter. But yet you love Shaq, who was an atrocious free throw shooter. But you hold against Will Chamberlain that he was a bad free throw shooter. You don't like bad closers, but Giannis is the ultimate closer. How many times have we seen games? Now, I know he didn't get done this year. And I'm not going to use Chris Middleton as an excuse, but I'm just going to say this. How many times have we watched Giannis and he's struggling in the first quarter and he hasn't scored? And, he has 0 points, 3 rebounds, and maybe 4 assists. And you're like, man, when is he going to get going? At halftime, he has 8. And then in the third quarter, he has 10. And then in the fourth quarter, he scores 20. How many times have we seen that? He's one of the great closers in the league, but yet Skip Bayless magically, mystically doesn't like him. gets on his free throw shooting. He's a fucking power forward. Power forwards generally don't shoot that well, especially strong players. They don't generally shoot that well from the line. And he got up to 72%, which, by the way, is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's career average. But people consider Kareem Abdul-Jabbar a good free throw shooter. So Skip's all over the place sometimes, man. So that's all I got to say, man. You got to take what he say with a grain of salt. And he's not a credible analyst. He is a shock jock. And so is his partner in crime, Shannon Sharp. They're two people that you listen to for entertainment purposes. All right? To be entertained. Not to be informed. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.